And hello, everyone, and welcome to Healthy Living Live. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Chef AJ, and my guest today is Dr. Howard Jacobson. Dr. Jacobson is the host of the Plant Yourself podcast and contributing author to Whole by Dr. T. Colin Campbell and Proteinaholic by Dr. Garth Davis. He is the chief of behavioral science at WellStart Health, which is a company dedicated to putting chronic disease out of business through education and coaching. So please welcome my friend, Dr. Howard Jacobson. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here. It's a fun new platform for me.
Right. Well, great. Yeah. So this is live, and we can also ask people if they want, they can share it with their groups in real time. And there'll also be a replay available immediately afterwards. And then we'll get this on YouTube for people that had to miss it live. So if you have any questions, you can type them in. But first, let's get to know who Dr. Howard Jacobson is. You came out of nowhere. Where did you come from? Because all of a sudden, you just appeared. You were on the cruise. You were at Summerfest. You were writing books with some of my favorite doctors. How did you get started in this?
Yeah, well, I used to be like a Russian oligarch, and then no, that's all right. That's not the story I want to tell today. I was flirting with the plant-based movement since 1990, but I had, I've been married to my wife for like 28 years, but I have a fear of commitment to lifestyles. So I read Diet for New America in 1990, and I immediately went whole food plant-based, and then I forgot. And then I met T. Colin Campbell in like 2004, and I read the China study at the end of that year, and then I forgot again. And then Dr. Campbell and I had struck up a friendship, and in 2011, he asked if I would help him edit a manuscript. And that was the first time that I really understood the science behind the plant-based lifestyle, as opposed to sort of attaching myself to someone whom I liked. Like, oh, John Robbins seems like a nice guy, but you know what? There's a lot of nice people out there who are wrong about stuff. So if your only litmus test is that's a nice person, then you're going to be jerked around by lots of nice people who are either mistaken or sociopathic. And so it was only in working on Whole with Dr. Campbell that I really said, okay, this is where I want to devote my life. And Dr. Campbell was incredibly generous with me throughout that process. And the thing that got me sort of noticed was he put me on the cover of the book, which I think is one of the most important books written in the last 30 or 40 years. And that sort of opened doors for me. And he was willing to open other doors and recommend me. And then, you met me, and that was the beginning of my meteoric rise.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's amazing, because I always wondered how you got started, because like I said, one day you were not there, and then the next day you were speaking at all these wonderful events, and you're such a great speaker. You so impressed me at Summerfest, because the first time I heard you speak, the PowerPoint didn't work. And you had a PowerPoint presentation with lots of slides. And I've seen a lot of professional speakers in that situation lose their cool, get really angry, yell at the volunteer that's trying to help them. But instead, you just went on and gave your talk to the best of your ability. And actually were very funny, because you kept going like this, saying, well, if the slide were there, it would have said. And I was so impressed, Howard. I said, that's the kind of guy I want to hire, because you just did great. And then, of course, the cruise, you were great. I always remember how you said about brushing. One thing I remember from all your talks is about you don't brush one tooth.
Right. Well, yeah, thanks. And I really appreciate your comments. You came up to me right afterwards, and you gave me a lot of confidence that I belonged in this world. Yep. And it's a great world to be in.
So let's talk about the world of WellStart Health, because I wasn't even aware that you were doing that. What is WellStart Health, and what do you do for them?
Yeah. So, I have this podcast, Plant Yourself, and about maybe almost 2 years ago, I had a guest, this woman, Olivia Kelly, who had started this company called WellStart Health, which was basically, she had discovered plant-based nutrition, and she's a sort of a public health person and a business person. And she kind of like couldn't understand why something of such value was not being disseminated more widely to solve real problems for companies. And so she said, like, we have this incredible healthcare crisis in this country. The more I've looked into it, the more it's like, it's destroying the middle class. When you look at what costs have gone up, over the past 25 years or so, we spend less on clothing, we spend less on transportation, we spend less on food, we spend less on vacations. As a percentage of income, it's all gone down, except healthcare spending has skyrocketed. And so everyone's talking about on the margins, like, well, the whole ACA debate, the Obamacare is like, who should pay for it? What should they pay for? Then there's all the cost saving things, but it's all dealing with the assumption that we have this huge burden of chronic disease. It's inevitable. And we have to figure out the cheapest, most effective way to deal with it. And what Olivia decided was, no, we don't. We don't have to assume that the burden of chronic disease has to exist. So we did our interview, and it was well received, and I was really intrigued. And we stayed in touch. And then Josh Lajani and I started doing the Big Change program, which was taking individuals and leading them through a process. And Olivia and I and Josh started talking, and we wanted to use her platform because it was better than the platforms that we had sort of cobbled together. And from there, it was basically like business dating, where it's like, wow, we have, the peanut butter, you have the chocolate, and let's make in homage to Dr. Esselstyn, a peanut butter cup.
Very cool.
So I came on board basically to help inform how do we get employees of companies to engage, to overcome their resistance? How do they get them to begin to take steps? And of course, you and I are very similar in that we both have what the world would consider an extreme view of what people should be eating and how we should be living, right? Very, very far from the mainstream. And we both know that you can't shock people with that on day one. You've got to sort of lead them incrementally to it. And that really is the challenge, because wellness, as it's practiced in the corporate setting, it's sort of like, we say, bringing sand to the beach, where you take the wellest people and you give them cheap gym memberships and pedometers, right? And of course, that doesn't accomplish anything. And what's the diet advice is, you should have like broiled shrimp over a salad, or take the skin off your white meat chicken, right? So of course, those aren't going to accomplish anything. So WellStart is dedicated to bringing the science of nutrition, the science of lifestyle in a comprehensive package to help employers reduce their healthcare costs.
That's amazing. So this isn't something that like the viewers could sign up for. It has to be a company, right?
Well, we also have the Big Change program moved over. That's still to the public, so people can go to bigchangeprogram.com and read about it and get on our mailing list. We've got about, I'd say, 80 people in the program in Big Change right now. So one of the interesting things is to see what's the same about people who come to the program on their own steam and employees who are sort of invited but might have a little bit less incentive or less motivation coming in, and kind of, figuring out all that stuff to really create a new culture in organizations where, it's like eating healthy is cool, where, there's all these jokes people make. I'm sure you experience this all the time, and it makes your skin crawl about all the, I don't exercise, or, I have a seafood diet, I seafood, I eat it, right? All the sort of jocular self-denigration that people do on a regular basis to make themselves feel better about all their bad habits. And that's not an insignificant thing to go and tackle in an organizational setting, because who wants to be the uncool kid who all of a sudden like really cares deeply about something?
Right. Well, let me just read some of the nice comments we have about you. Philip says that you are the bomb. And Kirsten says that you love Howard. He has the best podcast. I agree. You're top three, in my opinion. Of course, there's only three I listen to. So we might, you Rich Roll and Doug Lyle, but you have amazing podcasts. So if somebody that's watching today is like a business owner or a human resource director, could they hire your company to come in and do some magic?
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. One of the things I've learned in the business world is it's good when people give you money. So I wrote that down. I'm thinking of getting a tattoo because I spent so many years doing just the opposite.
Yeah.
Like you know how it is. You want to do everything for free and reach everybody. But yeah, we have actually a meeting right after this call with our second signed client, and yeah, we're looking for companies right now where sort of there's someone in a leadership position who understands not just the cost savings, but can you imagine a company of people who are all dedicated to living healthy, productive lives? Like, what kind of energy would there be in that office? What kind of resilience? Like the main thing we see when people come into the big change program when they've just begun, and I certainly remember this for myself, is I don't really trust myself. Right? Like every day I get up and I go, okay, today I'm going to eat like this. Today I'm going to move like this. Today I'm not going to snap at my kids. Today I'm not going to do this. And by the end of the day, I've done all those things. And so I go to bed thinking, I don't believe my own words. And how can that not spill over to some degree into your interactions with customers, with coworkers, with downlines, with uplines, with the whole organization? And so to have people feel like they can be in integrity with themselves around their health, around their daily habits, I think adds a tremendous amount of accountability, like just sort of add accountability and stir to an organization.
So do the people that work with your company have to live in North Carolina, or can they be anywhere?
Oh no, we're virtual. So it's Olivia's in California. Josh Lajani, whom I haven't talked about, but I know a lot of your viewers / listeners will be very familiar with him and his story from Rich Roll and from talking with you. He's in Louisiana. I'm in North Carolina. So it's an entirely digital platform. Right? Because we want it to be able to reach workforces wherever they are. And if you think about like who are the type of people who find us easily, and this is a broad generalization, but it's typically people who have seen forks over knives, who live within 30 miles of a Whole Foods. Right? And the people who we really want to reach are like blue collar America, oil rig workers, truck drivers, machinists, factory workers, people who have not been told that this is possible, people who are costing their companies a tremendous amount. It's almost a rite of passage to get diabetes in your 40s, a stent in your 50s, open heart surgery in your 60s. And these are not cheap operations. And then you see the tragedy that we think of as normal in American life. Grandparents dying in their 70s shortly after retirement, people unable to participate in their kids' lives, right? People widowed by cancer and sudden heart disease, right? So all that stuff that I can't even use words, like the systemic effect of doctors, of the medical profession, of our culture not making this common knowledge is tragic. And so that's kind of what we're going after.
So we have a great question from Philip. He says he would like to ask you how you plan to train health coaches who want to join the Well Start movement.
We're starting a training program in a couple of weeks. And basically coaching is the DNA of what we're doing. And coaching is kind of a hard thing for us in the plant-based movement for a bunch of reasons. And when I say coaching, I mean sort of the skills of listening, other people's motivation. One thing is we're so passionate about the lifestyle. I can't think of 10 people who came in like I did, totally for health, who haven't, against our will, been dragged into like animal rights, veganism, environmentalism. Like I don't even want to be that person, right? And yet I find myself like I found a leather jacket in the closet. I'm like, I'm never going to wear this again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like looking at my leather work boots that I bought a bunch of years ago. I'm like, oh, I can't wait till these wear out so I can go get something synthetic. Like it's hard because we're so passionate. It's very easy for us to want to interpose our own viewpoints. And because we know this stuff works so well, we just want to, don't just want to walk down the street and just like shake everybody's head and say, like when you see them eating something. So those characteristics are not really compatible with coaching.
Right.
Right. And also there's one more thing that I'm discovering, which is in the medical model, doctors just tell people what to do. Right. But in the lifestyle model, we have to motivate people to take action. It's much harder to get someone to, eat 2 pounds of veggies a day than to take their pill. So we get really into the idea of motivation. And therefore, we think that all of coaching is motivating people. And the truth is that once people are motivated, they don't need to be continually motivated. The problem, it becomes getting traction. Right. So having a set of coaching skills that apply across the board is very important. So we're starting a coaching program. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I think the first day will be the 15th of June. It'll be a 12-week or 13-week course. And it'll be both to kind of train coaches so that I don't have to work every night. And also just to train coaches who want to gain the skills to be able to help clients who might be stuck.
That's great. So how would somebody find out about how to be involved with this coaching program?
They should email me.
May I type your email in?
Sure.
Is HJ?
HJ@plantyourself.com is a good one.
Okay. Self.com. I'm going to put that up on the screen right now. Make sure I have it spelled correctly. There we go. Okay, there we go. It's right on the screen. Terrific. So Heather wants to know, how do people avoid recidivism?
Yeah, well, some of us can't even spell it, so it's easy to avoid. Great question. Heather, by the way, is one of my favorite podcast guests. So hello, Heather. So the question of like recidivism sort of implies that we're fighting gravity, right? That the default is to sort of slide back to where we were. And that is true and I've learned a lot of this from Josh Lajani, my business partner in Big Change and now WellStart, talks about like when we get started, we often do what we think of as plate spinning, right? Like I have a routine and now I'm going to change my routine, but I have to work hard to sustain it because it's not natural to me. And so I can do it for a while until, my kid gets sick, until I have to work overtime, until the weather gets crappy and I can't go for my walk, right? Whatever the thing is that gets in the way, life is going to get in the way. Things are not going to be simple. And at that point, when things aren't simple, we naturally return to our defaults. So the answer to overcoming recidivism is to create new defaults. And there's two main ways to do this. One is through upgrading your skills. So, in your story, you were a vegan pastry chef. So you had to learn how to make things delicious without all that added sugar and fat, right? So it was, even though you're a chef, you had a set of learning curves that you had to practice and fail and succeed and learn so that you could do the new thing. And so that's one thing, to figure out how to upgrade your skills so that you're no longer the same person. Like, when I was playing violin from the age of 9, nobody asked me at the age of 17, are you worried about playing like a 9-year-old again? Right? Because I couldn't go back there. I practiced. The second thing is to turn that plate spinning into an identity. Right? And what does it mean to have an identity? It means instead of saying, I try to eat whole food, plant-based, SOS free, you in your mind, you change that to, I am the sort of person who, so that what you're doing becomes a conscious reflection of your values, your goals, your priorities. So those are the two things that we teach people in terms of not backsliding as soon as things get hard.
That's great. So let's see. We have a nice question here from Leslie. She says, her husband is the only whole food plant-based SOS-free employee at his plant. Is there an easy way to share your program with his management? They have most employees drop off in early 50s due to demanding physical nature of working with concrete. They need help.
Sure, he can contact me directly at hj@plantyourself.com. He can also take a look at wellstarthealth.com. And, we're in the process of putting up a blog, of putting up a lot more marketing material. We have stuff that we can send. And, one of the important things we want to do is when we talk to a company is really consult with them rather than just saying, we have this tool and it's going to work for everyone. So to be able to talk to people who have a strategic say in where the company's going, because we don't want to be just another wellness program that, somebody just says, oh yeah, that looks good. That'll make them happy. Let's give them pedometers. Let's tell them to park 4 blocks away, 4 spaces away from the supermarket. We want this to be integrated into the culture of the company, partly because we offer risk reversal. So if we don't succeed in lowering costs or in whatever the metric that we agree upon, we refund a good proportion of our fee. So we can't afford to screw up.
So let me ask you this. Put myself back on screen. So one of the things I hear from people, like in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, they do a really good job at home sticking with the program. They've cleaned their environment, but they go to these jobs. Many of them are, say, nurses, where there's just a lot of junk food in the environment, and maybe they relapse there because of the climate in the company. Do you have a way to deal with that? Because I find that for the people that are prone to, having lapses or slips on junk food, it always seems to be at the job, assuming their home environment is clean. So do you ever advise the companies that maybe that's not such a great thing? Or how do you advise the people that are in these jobs that can't change the climate?
Right. Well, there's 2 parts to that. One is, you want to create an environment that's as conducive as possible to the lifestyle you want. And at the same time, you want to be anti-fragile enough within yourself that you don't have to walk around in fear of your environment. So those aren't necessarily things that happen at the exact same time. So I wouldn't say to someone who has just gone whole food, plant-based, SOS free, like, hey, let's try an experiment. Let's spend an hour at the bakery not buying anything, or let's walk down the cookie aisle at Safeway, or let's test your mettle by having your husband bring home 17 boxes of Oreo of Thin Mints and just leave them there and don't eat them, right? So we want to start where we are, and if that means avoiding certain functions until you've gotten your taste buds to reacclimate. But at a certain point, and I learned this from Josh Lajani, because when he first gave this answer, it kind of shocked me and woke me up. He says, everyone, if you are eating really well, and let's say you go to a Super Bowl party and there's some wings and some dip or some fried something or other, everyone will understand if you have a little bit, right? Everyone will be, okay, yeah, he's doing great. He says, that's exactly the time when you don't do that. Because you basically, if you eat well in private 99% of the time, and you have these little slip-ups in public, you are lying to everybody in public, right? You're basically telling them, you can get what I got by doing this. And so if you care about those people, instead of peer pressure, saying, oh, I want to do it, that's you come in with your own internal sense of responsibility to these people, your coworkers, your friends, your family, your community, your church group. These people are dying for lack of what you know. And are you really going to pretend that you don't know it in front of them, of all places and of all times?
Wow.
So that really inspired a lot of folks to say, we've got to be lighthouses. This doesn't work this movement doesn't work if we are selfish with it. If we discover Chef AJ and Ultimate Weight Loss and we do it really well, and then we walk around in the world keeping it to ourselves, then great. We're going to be skinny on a dying planet.
Wow. That I love what you just said, because when people do make exceptions and they make the exceptions, in front of people, I find that the people often then don't take their dietary choices seriously, because they, it's sort of like, an alcoholic, but okay, if somebody pressures them, well, come on, I made this drink just for you. They never really take you seriously when you do that.
Yeah. Or they take you seriously the wrong way. They think, oh, well, everything in moderation. Right. Look at Howie. Look at Howie eating that cheese dip. I guess that's fine.
Yeah. Yep. That's others are watching. Jewel is saying one has to be responsible and more strict of themselves in front of others. And I agree. Robin is saying incredibly profound thought about how our actions affect others. So true. So when it says that you're the chief of behavioral science, what does that mean, Chief?
Chief. Yeah. Well, I'll focus on behavioral science because I really don't understand the chief part. Yeah, I'm the CBS.
Okay.
That's because they wouldn't let me be the EIEIO, so I had to settle. Basically, behavioral science means what we know about behavior, about what actually works and what doesn't work, so that we know so much now about what motivates human beings and how we can apply that knowledge to get people to take actions and to make choices in their own best interest. And yet, in the world, behavioral science knowledge is about as rare as whole food plant-based knowledge is in the medical world. So it's this little nugget of evidence-based wisdom that works so much better than anything else. And a lot of it comes from the sort of behavioral economics world of Danny Kahneman and Amos Tversky and Dan Ariely and Richard Thaler and a lot of other people. And it's sort of come into the mainstream a little bit with companies like Google and Facebook who are sort of, sharing ideas about how to create environments in which it's easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing. And if you're not in one of those environments, how to create a micro environment for yourself. So really what I'm looking at is how do we get people to do the things they say they want to do when the entire culture is structured to prevent that.
Absolutely. Peggy was saying that you're hitting the nail on the head. Social peer pressure is a killer to whole food plant-based. And it's so true what you say, Howard, that if you can be in an environment that supports what you want to do, it's so much easier. That's why even people that say, oh, I can't lose weight no matter what I do, they go to True North, and guess what? They all lose weight. They reverse disease because the environment is conducive to that only and nothing else. Do you have a favorite book that you might want to recommend to our viewers on behavioral change? And I'm wondering if you're familiar with the book Motivational Interviewing in Healthcare and what you think about that book.
Let me see. Well, I have this one, Motivational Interviewing in Nutrition and Fitness. So
interesting. Yeah.
It's close. Is that by the same people? I don't know yours.
Pulled it up again. Let me see the author's name because I don't think so. But it's very interesting that you have that book. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get yours. What to say, like, what have I been reading lately? There's tons of really good books on behavioral science. One of them that I really like and I refer to all the time is called How to Have a Good Day by Caroline Webb. Another great one is called Change Anything by so many authors I can't remember any of their names. There's Thinking Fast and Slow. The Power of 50 Bits by Bob Nease, Nease. But I want to tell you what I'm reading now, which is none of those. And it's the works of people like Peter Levine and Stephen Porges. Are you familiar with Porges?
I'm not.
This is mind-blowing stuff. It's Stephen Porges came I guess about 20 years ago, but he just published in 2011. It's only becoming disseminated now, something called the polyvagal theory, which is, I think, central to, like, I'm sure we have people in the program who always want to do the right thing. And, then they come back and they say like something, I don't even know what happened. I like woke up having binged, or I just wasn't present. And we want to shake them, and we want to say like, tough it out, like and what I've discovered is that in a lot of people especially who have suffered trauma in childhood, and who of us hasn't to some degree, not to minimize awful trauma, but there's like none of us comes out undamaged. That actually the nervous system can lock in ways of being that basically override all of our cognitive abilities and all of our desired emotions. So we want to be calm, we want to be loving, we want to be reflective, and yet our nervous system gets locked into either fight or flight or collapse. And we literally, it's almost like asking someone to eat well under those circumstances is like asking someone in the back passenger seat to turn the steering wheel. But we don't understand that. So we focus on the cognitive techniques and we focus on motivation. And the more we focus on that and the more we push them, the more they believe that there's something wrong with them because they can't turn the steering wheel. So a lot of this work is really based on getting people back in their bodies, getting people comfortable. And the polyvagal theory is all about the vagus nerve, which runs from the back of the head, innervates the face, the guts, and the lower organs. And each branch of that has a different relationship to our autonomic nervous system. So what I was taught about stress was that we're either relaxed or we're in fight or flight. Right? And it turns out that by polyvagal theory, there's a third state called collapse. So if you think about it, you're walking out in the world and you see other giant mammals as big as you or bigger. And so if they're human, we try to use social engagement. That's the best way to be safe because it takes the least amount of effort. And we want to be safe with people. We smile, we use a tone of voice that goes up and down and reminds them of their mother when they were in the womb, and we make them feel safe. If that doesn't work, or if we're dealing with some other thing, if we sense danger, we mobilize, which is known as fight or flight. Some fear comes into us and we're ready to act. If we can't act, and most of the situations in which we feel fear, especially as children, we get immobilized. From child abuse to neglect. There's nothing that running or fighting is going to do for us. And so our bodies then go into the third vagal state, which is collapse, which is the same as like a possum playing dead or a mouse, suddenly going into rictus in the cat's mouth, because that's our last best chance to not get eaten. It's the oldest circuit. And so if we go into that, if every time we see something stressful, or we think a stressful thought, or we feel a little bit of agitation, and our nervous system is trained to go into collapse or into fight or flight, we can't help but binge on food, make all these bad decisions because we think we're under threat and we got to get calories now so we can do the thing, so we can run away, or we completely dissociate. So a lot of the most interesting work I'm doing right now is getting people back in their bodies and de-stressing, not cognitively, but physically.
Wow, that's incredible. Linda is saying that a good self-help book for the polyvagal is Accessing the Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve by Stanley Rosenberg, intro by Stephen Porges. I bet you have it.
It's a fantastic book.
Terrific. That's so cool. So just to switch gears for a minute, because most everybody here listens to your podcast. If there's somebody watching that is not familiar with it, what's the best way to access it? Is it like through iTunes or to be on your mailing list if they want to be notified for future episodes?
Yeah, however you consume podcasts is probably the right way to do it. So I'm on iTunes. You can get the last, I believe, 50 episodes on iTunes, but I'm up to 272 as of today. So you can get the rest from plantyourself.com. At some point, I will figure out like the thing that Rich Roll did and have an app so that people can get them all. I looked at it and there were too many fields to fill out. So I was like, some other time. You can certainly go to plantyourself.com and get on the mailing list. And I'm a fairly erratic correspondent, which is good and bad. It's good in that you won't get bombarded by spam, but I don't write as often as I should.
Right. So is there, you interview some really interesting people on your podcast that I would never have heard of had you not interviewed them. Is there somebody that you're really trying to get to interview that you just would love to interview that so far you haven't been able to get?
Oh, yeah, lots of people. I wanted to get Brene Brown. She's a little busy these days.
Mhm.
I asked Light Watkins, who was just on Rich Roll, whom I fell in love with his spirit, and he's busy these days. There's a guy named Bill Plotkin who runs the Animas Valley Institute, which is all about healing people through deep interactions with nature. Love to get him on. Um, Gosh, you're asking me my kid in the candy store question.
Right. Well, maybe they'll watch this and somehow because I've always wanted to interview Michael Moss, but I can't even reach him. I've tried through his the recourses that other people. I've always he's the guy that wrote Sugar, Salt, and Fat. That would be my kid in the candy store interview.
Nice, nice. Although, yeah, I mean, when I'm talking to people, though, I'm so happy. One of the things I love to do, actually, this may be a little bit of sour grapes because I don't have nearly the reach of Rich or Tim Ferriss or some other folks. So, but I get people nobody's heard of, who
Yeah, really interesting people.
I had a couple of like these people are like heroes to me, but no one else has ever heard of them. Greg Walton and Greg Sparkman are two researchers who've done amazing work. I think their work is going to change the world, and they're just in academia, and they're very open. They're very, very generous with their time to talk about the stuff they're working on. So I have no complaints about the people that I get to talk to, and people like you and Heather and people who inspire me, because not only are you doing all this amazing stuff, but you've got like full other lives. Like like someone like Heather takes away lots of people's excuses, right? They think, well, I'm not a professional, I'm doing other stuff. Look at her, look at Josh, look at Tim Kaufman, look at Adam Sudd, look at all the people who have transformed themselves through sort of self-love, willpower, whatever the secret sauce is that's available to all of us.
Right. So putting your chief of behavioral science cap, your CBS cap back on, one of the things I hear a lot in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, and perhaps you do hear this as well in the Big Change Program, is a lot of stopping and starting, falling off, getting back on. What advice do you have for people that have a real hard time getting the momentum? There's people that just do it and they say, they say that success doesn't look like this. It kind of looks like this, but sometimes they just lose that momentum and just feel like they failed so many times and they don't want to try anymore. So what kind of advice can you give a person that's going through that?
Yeah. First of all, that's pretty much everybody.
Right.
And it's not just in this domain. It's just that in a lot of domains, we call it growth and learning as opposed to failure or falling off the wagon. So the framing is very important. So one of the things we teach, and here's another book that I really like. It's called Organize Tomorrow Today, and it has nothing to do with health. It's all about sort of like being a productive person. But they talk about habits in a way that I love. So there's 3 stages of habit formation. There's the honeymoon phase, right? You suddenly discover this thing. Oh, I'm going to throw out all my stuff. I'm going to be perfect from now on. You have a week or two. You're like, oh my God, this is amazing. You buy your running shoes. You're going around the block every day. You're like, I can't imagine ever not doing this. And then the 3rd phase is second nature, where you just do it. It's who you are. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to put any extra energy into it. The 2nd phase is called the fight through phase, because that's where life starts throwing you things that get you off your game, knock you down. And what happens with most people is, I think of it as mugging. They get mugged. Like I was walking down the aisle and all of a sudden the Chips Ahoy were screaming at me, or they had a party at the office and they had pizza, and like I wasn't prepared. So to me, that's like walking down the street and you got mugged. And that's terrifying because you had no control. You didn't choose the time. You didn't choose the place. You didn't you didn't defend, you defended yourself maybe as best you could, but still it was out of nowhere, and you felt like the environment was superseding your control over life. So what we teach people to do is go through that phase looking for fights. So go in, and that's when we talked about before, like don't go immediately to the Thin Mints, but at some point go to some place, go into the break room and sit there and decide, I'm going to go into the break room and I'm not going to have a damn Krispy Kreme. And I'm going to try that for 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, maybe you give in, maybe you don't. But at that point, you have what we call, it's a cage match. You went in to have the fight, to take the initiative, to do it on your own terms. And every time you do that, you learn something. And ideally, you win more than you lose. So you take all those situations in which you fail, you learn from them. I teach something that I learned from a mentor and friend, Peter Bregman. He calls it the FAST assessment. So let's say somebody has, come home from work and they went out to lunch with everyone. They were only going to get the salad at Cheesecake Factory, and they ended up, they ordered the salad, and then their neighbor couldn't finish, so they had all the noodles, and then everyone got a piece of cheesecake with the iced tea with the sugar in it, and they feel terrible. So the FAST assessment was you look for the moment at which you could have made a different choice. There's usually a power moment. And then you ask the 4 FAST questions. What was I feeling? How was I acting? What was I saying? What was I thinking? And you turn it from, oh, I'm such a terrible person, what's wrong with me, into let's be a scientist and assess what happened. Was it a thought? It's usually a thought, right? The thought is something like, well, I deserve this, I've had a hard day. Or the thought is, I'll just have a little bit of the cheesecake, everyone else is having it. And you start to pay attention to what that thought was. And, oh, okay, so now I know that thought. Next time I hear it, I'm going to say, that is not me. That's a thought trying to get me to binge. And so I refuse to listen to it. So I've learned one of your tricks. Right? So the voice in our head that's trying to get us to binge, because it's comforting. It's a survival drive, right? It's Doug Lyle's motivational triad. That's inside us, living in our architecture. And if we can understand it and we can watch it in ourselves, then we learn its tricks and we can neutralize it. So I would say, don't think of it as starting and stopping. Think of it as the natural progression. And your job is to learn from every occasion. If you're not learning from it, there's 2 ways people don't learn from it. One is they will beat themselves up mercilessly. I don't know if you have this in your program, but people will come in and like they're coming to confession.
Yep.
I was so bad. I can't believe I did this. I'm so ashamed of myself. Right. And what they're doing is like, give me the sword and I will stab myself, because I would rather do it than have you stab me. So it's a protection mechanism. The second thing people do is they say, oh, well, I'm just going to get up and keep going. And of course, that's a happier thought, but it's not responsible to what happened. You're not being accountable for if you don't say, okay, let's look and see what happened here as a scientist, dispassionately, and see if I can learn from it. See if I can create one tweak next time. Hey, maybe if I do this, maybe if I eat an apple beforehand, maybe if I tell my neighbor, hey, you know what happens usually is I finish my salad and I want to eat something else. Maybe you could sort of just, wink at me at that moment, whatever it is, to figure out something else to do. So every one of those failures is necessary for your growth, but you waste it if you don't really, take advantage of the richness of behavioral information available to you.
Wow. People are really loving this, Howard. Robin had a great question. She asked if you have a list of all the great books you've mentioned. Do you have a list in one place, like a Howard Jacobson or reading list?
Oh, well, there's my, it's getting full. There's barely enough room for your new book.
I will be mailing that soon. Thank you so much for the kind endorsement. Speaking of books, do you have any plans to write one?
I'm working on two right now. One is they're both with Josh Lajani. One is sort of his memoir, which is going to come out a little bit later. But we're working with an editor right now on what we're calling it the Big Change Bible. That name will probably change, but it's basically everything that he and I have learned together. Him mostly from experience, and me mostly from books, and putting it together and validating it with a few hundred people through the Big Change program. So it's kind of, we're looking at making it the Big Change program in a book.
Nice, nice. Well, one of the things you once spoke to one of our ultimate weight loss programs, and one of the things you said it's someone else's saying, but it was really helpful, was turn a bad day into good data, and I thought that was really useful.
Yeah, and that's from Change Anything. So see, I'm an equal opportunity thief. I steal from everywhere I find good stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's the thing I've been teaching people more and more to come in with is what Carol Dweck calls the growth mindset, which is a great book to read if you're struggling. And the idea is that there's a couple of different mindsets around your ability to change and grow and improve. I grew up with what she calls a fixed mindset, which is I am what I am, and basically I can't really change that. And so I can't deal with evidence of not being good enough. So I remember I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. My dad took me to the Y to join a basketball league. I'd never played basketball before, so I was trying to dribble with both hands, and I could see I wasn't doing it right. After 45 minutes, I said, I don't like basketball. I didn't play basketball again until high school. So because I had to be good or else I was nothing, I wasn't willing to grow or try. And so I had to learn, I had to grow into a growth mindset from a fixed mindset in order to be okay, and to be okay with failure and to try things. Right? So when people come to this, a lot of us have this fixed mindset, and we think, I made a mistake, therefore that defines me in some way. And I can't deal with that. So the first time, as soon as they start feeling bad for something they've done or something they haven't done, it becomes overwhelming. And so to take the steps that Dweck lays out in the book to start to develop a growth mindset, and the easiest way to do it is to ask yourself questions like, can I tie my shoes now? Can I brush my teeth by myself? Can I drive a car? Can I write a check? Could I do any of those things when I was born? Well, no, duh. Therefore, I must have the ability to grow and change. And that's the nature of my being, is I am a change growth machine. And it's only these few areas that I've decided are more important to me than life itself, that I have this fixed identity that I'm unwilling to tarnish by trying something that I might not succeed at. So when we can achieve a growth mindset, then all of a sudden we don't have to spend so much energy defending ourselves and defending our egos.
Well, what do you think makes it so difficult for so many people to adopt lifestyle or dietary change and affect it so that it's permanent? Do you think it's the environment? Do you think it's the social forces? Do you think it's the food addiction aspect? It just seems that there's so many obstacles that people face. What do you think is the one, or is there one, or is it just there's so many for some people?
Yeah, I don't know how we would do the experiment, but having worked on a book called Whole, I'm very suspicious of finding the one of anything. Certainly, if we all lived in environments in which everyone was eating the right way, we would be eating the right way, right? So the best predictor of behavior is what the people around us are doing, and so we have this this biological drive. So if we have the motivational triad, we also have this biological drive to act the same as everybody else. Right? It's a tremendously powerful brain shortcut that if I see you eating something, then I go, okay, well, that's safe to eat, and it's probably good for me, because if it wasn't, you'd be dead. So we want to be part of the herd. It's a very, very powerful impulse. So to overcome that, we kind of have to create our own herds. And this video format and all the places it's going to be shared is part of a digital revolution in in the way that we can create, real community without being next to each other. And certainly the addictive nature of these fake foods plays a huge part. Certainly the convenience of it and the marketing of it. I would say you and I, we would have been much better off, just like selling something addictive, like, cigarettes or Coca-Cola. We would be working a lot less hard and having a lot more success.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But then how would we live with ourselves, right? Well, I just want to ask you a fun question, because I always like to, there's a couple questions I like to ask people that don't necessarily have anything to do with what we're talking about. But if you were on death row and going to be executed for a crime that you did not commit, what would you choose for your last meal?
Okay. That's funny, because I actually asked not that exact question, but I asked I had a theory about that question, that basically, like, if you had one day to live and you knew like a meteor was going to destroy the earth, what would you eat that day? And the reason I asked it is I had a theory that the people who were really successful in the program would say, I would just eat what I normally eat. I would, I'd have my kale, I'd have my smoothie, I'd have my greens, I'd have my sweet potatoes. And the people who weren't really getting it yet would then go back to, I'd have my double cheeseburger and my chicken fried steak and all that stuff. And it didn't come out exactly that clean. But I've got to say, I don't, I wouldn't want to face death with a stomach ache. And like, food has become so much less of an important thing for me than it used to be. And I know you talk about this all the time, that when we stop getting dopamine from food, we can then have the space to get it from other places, right? To find reward in work, in community, in nature, in song, in movement. So I would hope that that the dopamine hit from food wouldn't be that interesting to me.
Right. It's funny. I asked Dr. Goldhammer that question once at a conference, and he named some rare exotic fruit that apparently doesn't exist anymore, because his feeling was then it would be delaying his execution while they were out searching, the planet for it. I don't know if you've ever interviewed him, but I think he'd be a great one for your podcast.
I did interview.
Oh, you did? Okay, good. Maybe you probably did, and it's just been a while since I listened to it.
He and you and a couple other people have kindly agreed to be part of the Big Change Book Club.
Oh my God. So yes, that was really fun. Yeah, you had such nice people. So I know you have something you have to be on in just a couple minutes. So why don't you just spend the last few minutes just bringing it home and also reiterating the coaching thing you're going to be doing, that if people wanted to get involved with, they could email you for, in case, because some people did join the broadcast while it was already in progress. Yeah,
so we're looking for some coaches, not, this isn't one of those technical school sorts of things where we're going to charge you a ton of money and then promise you a job. We're looking for just a few coaches, and to do that, we're going to be offering a coach training program, and it includes a lot of the coaching methodology that I've used and learned over the years. It comes from various people. I mentioned Peter Bregman. I alluded to the coaching methodology of Glenn Livingston from Never Binge Again. Have you guys talked? Yeah.
No, we haven't. I've read his book, though.
Okay. You guys would love each other.
All right, cool.
And so kind of putting that together into a program to give people the skills, basically, to help their clients get traction. So I got this from Peter Bregman. I'll reiterate it, that a lot of coaching has been about motivation. And motivation is really good at the beginning. But at a certain point, we have to recognize that people's problem is not motivation, it's follow through. And I'm just quoting Peter Bregman here. And so to have the skills to help people get traction, to take that cardboard and stick it under their wheels so they can actually move. So the coaching program is going to begin on June 15th. I'd like to fill it up by the beginning of that week, like the 11th. And it's going to run for 13 weeks, and it'll be webinars that you can sort of watch at your own time, and then putting the thing into practice yourself, and then training, and then coaching somebody else, and then getting debriefed. So it's kind of a professional training designed to help people become effective at helping others change their behaviors.
That's fantastic. Philip is saying, I'm ready to become a coach, Howard. I want to join you and Josh in this movement. And Vanessa and Jewel and a bunch of other people did, which is why I just put Howard's email up on the screen, hj@plantyourself.com. And I'm sure he'll get back to you right away and tell you how to do that. So it's been great talking to you. I always learn something new when I talk to you. I'm going to listen again because I like to take notes after I hear something the first time. And I wish you success with the 2 books you're writing and with the Big Change program and with your CBS job, not your NBC or your ABC job. I like that. The Chief of Behavior. I like titles. That's fun. Of Behavioral Science with wellstarthealth.com. If anybody has a business that they'd be interested in having corporate coaching online, virtual. So that's pretty cool. So anything exciting happening in North Carolina right now?
Well, the blueberries are probably going to be ripe in a week or two if we don't get the hurricane between now and then.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be interviewing one of your neighbors next week, Kathy Hester. Do you guys like hang out, and do you go to her house for dinner?
Not enough. Not enough. We always try to invite her over here because she always brings the latest thing she's working on.
Right. And she's great. Love her.
She is awesome. I live in a great, aside from California, North Carolina, and Garth Davis just moved to the state.
And did he move close to you? I know he moved, but he moved to, I think, Asheville?
Asheville. It's 3 hours. It's closer than Houston.
That's pretty cool. You've got him in your state now. Wow, one of my favorite.
So we're going to take on that pig industry. We're going to make
let's just pick one state and let's all of us move there. All right. Well, thank you so much, Howard. And thanks all of you guys for watching another episode of Healthy Living Live. And again, if you're interested in becoming a coach, being trained by Howard, just contact him at his email, hj@plantyourself.com. And if you want more information about what he does in the corporate world, just go to wellstarthealth, excuse me, not Health Start Well. That's a little bit wrong, wellstarthealth.com. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Howard. And I'm Chef AJ, and I make healthy taste delicious.